We'll start with one number song. Good evening. Let's sing number 616. Brightly beams our Father's mercy. 616. Brightly beams our Father's mercy from his lighthouse evermore. But to us he gives the keeping of the lights along the shore. Let the Lord lights be burning, send the gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, may save. The night of sin has settled, loudly angry billows roll. Eager eyes are watching longing for the lights along the shore. Let the Lord lights be burning, send the gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save. Trim your feeble lamp, my brother. Some poor sailor tempest tossed, trying now to make the harbor in the darkness may be lost. Let the Lord lights be burning, send the gleam across the way. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman, you may rescue, you may save. Good evening again. I'm very much looking forward to tonight and hearing what Phil and Myron have to share with us and sharing their experiences and their perspective. I was there with them for a couple years, and so it will be interesting to see their perspective in their time in Nicaragua. And for a short devotional, I was thinking a little bit about testifying or being a witness. What is testifying? And I think it's sharing what God has done for me to other people. It's something that happens, sharing what God, and an outflowing of what has happened from the inside. And I was thinking about it. It doesn't take special people or important people or some people that think that have it all together. It just takes willing people that are willing to, just share what God has done. And so, thinking about Myron and Phil, sharing about their time there, I'm sure they would very much say that it's only by God's grace that they can, their time there and the testimony they could, share there. I would like to read Isaiah 6, 1 to 13. It will be in the ESV. This is, Isaiah, the chapter where Isaiah says, here am I, send me. I've always liked this chapter, so I'm going to read the entire chapter. In that year, King Uzziah died and saw the Lord sitting upon the throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood a seraphim. Each had 6 wings, with 2 covering his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and 2 he flew. And one called to another, saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the fountains of the threshold shook the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. And then one of the seraphims flew to me, having his hand with a burning coal that he had taken with the tongs from the altar, and he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, your guilt is taken away, and your sins are atoned for. And I heard a voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here I am, send me. And he said, Go and say to this people, Keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of his people dull, and the ears heavy, and bind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Then I say, How long, O Lord? And he said, Until the cities lie waste without inhabitant, and houses without people, and the land is a desolate waste, and the Lord removed people far away, and forsaken places are many in the midst of the land, and though the 10th remain in it, it will be burned again like a terebinth or an oak, whose stump remains when it is felled, and the holy seed is its stump. One of the things that I really like about this verse, first of all, it says that it's in this vision Isaiah sees, or is in God's presence, and it's his holiness, and he realizes his unholiness before a really holy God, and he realizes his uncleanness before God. And I was thinking, we were all unclean before God, and we all needed God to cleanse us. And here the angel, or the seraphim, flew to Isaiah and touched his lips with the coal, and his sin was taken away. And I was thinking about that. We have a story to tell to the world about what happened to us, and what is our response to that? Are we going to go to the world? And that doesn't necessarily have to be in another land. It can be just to our neighbor or our coworkers or anywhere. And it says another thing that I really like in verse 11. It says, How long, O Lord? And it basically says, until everyone has heard. Until everyone has heard, until the Lord comes back. So, my challenge is, what is our response? And we're all called to testify, to be faithful where God has called us. And I'm looking forward to hear what Myron and Phil have to share about their time in Nicaragua, and it was a blessing serving with them there and seeing their faithfulness there. I think we'll start with Phil. Can come up and share, and I think just right after Myron could come up as well, and we'll go in that order.
evening, and Christian greetings to each one. It's a privilege to be able to share with the church here, and I guess I should say as well, thank you for, after being back for a few months now, thank you for receiving us back into your midst and showing us hospitality to my wife and I. And so I guess I was asked tonight to share of my time in Nicaragua, and I guess it's fairly wide open as to what I want to share, and I wasn't exactly sure. John said something to me. He said that we all have a different perspective. So even as if we were all in the same place in Nicaragua, in the same mission, we may have different things to share, and that's good. And I also feel that although we're back here in Canada now, and we feel that we're somewhat removed now from the mission and from the churches in Nicaragua, we still think about them a lot, and we still wish that we could be in Nicaragua as well, but we're also thankful that we can be here, and unfortunately we can't be in two different places at once. So I thought that I might talk a bit more about my personal experience in Nicaragua. I'm not sure what Myron's has to share, but maybe he'll talk more about the churches and the mission function in Nicaragua. And perhaps some of you definitely know about the work in Nicaragua. And so hopefully I can just give you a bit of a glimpse of what we experienced. First of all, I was going to give a quick overview of my 5.5 years since I spent more or less 5.5 years in Nicaragua. I guess I have to think all the way back to the beginning, and I just remember that at the beginning when I left here, which was in 2017, and started living in Malpaisillo, Nicaragua, it was hard. It was kind of like starting a new job. Like, you just don't know, like, what are you supposed to do, and everything has to be shown to you, and you just feel like you don't fit in. And so it was hard. The first years were hard, and I always think of new missionaries, and I pity them a bit because it's necessary. People have to be new to be able to be experienced, you have to be new. So, but I remember one of my thoughts being new on the mission field was, I can't wait till the mission is accomplished and we can all just go back to Canada again. But I guess that was my thought. It was just a fleeting thought. I mean, that isn't the way it is. That's not the way missions are. And well, I guess my thinking changed. After 2 years of service, I guess when I went, it was initially for 2 years, and after that, I guess I felt that it was God's will for me to continue there, and I really felt that, in a way, I was just getting started, the thing about getting adjusted to new place, and after 2 years, and so then my time became an indefinite term, and so I lived in Malpaisillo. I guess some of you would know, have been there. Some of you, not everyone. I lived in a house that was owned by the mission on the church property. And I lived alone for 4 years, from 2017 to 2021. And I guess God saw my need for a companion, and He granted me a wife, and I'm thankful for her. And so after 4 years, we got married in February of 2021. Thinking back to the beginning, I don't think I had in mind that I was going to be a farmer in Nicaragua. It's not that that was my goal, but I do remember having a vision of trying to be part of the community and to work and live among the people. And, well, being I do enjoy animals, I guess I started out, I think in the first year, I bought 2 goats, and I had a sow, just as something to do. And there's also probably about a half an acre of land on the mission property. And over time, animals tend to multiply, and being I enjoyed working with animals, it kind of went from there. And so that's where it started, and then, well, a year ago, would have been 2022, at the beginning of last year. When I think back to a year ago, it seems like our life has changed drastically. A year ago, we were still in the same house where I would have lived, and my herd of goats I had about 20, and 3 sows, and a boar, and a dog, and a cat, and my wife, and our little son, and also my sister Heidi was living with us at that time. She would have went to Nicaragua in September, I believe, of 2021. And so she lived in the same house as us. And to tell the truth, it was a fulfilling life. We really enjoyed living there and our work and the involvement in the church. We felt that, that we had the perfect life, although, I mean, there's always problems and challenges, but we enjoyed it. But then during this past year, obviously there's been lots of changes, and I guess after getting married, my wife and I were thinking and seeking God's will for our future. And on one hand, I kind of had in mind of maybe, or of at least traveling back here to Canada, to my homeland, and also to be with our family and church family here. And so we weren't sure what God's will was for us, considering coming to visit, or if we actually wanted to move here. And so in the end, we decided that we would apply for a residency. See, I don't know how it's about for Nicaraguans to travel to North America, it's more complicated than it is for us as North Americans to travel. And so my wife either needed a visa for a visiting visa or a residency. And being we applied for residency, we basically just waited to see. It took about a year for the residency to process, and during that year it was hard for us to make plans due to the uncertainty of the paperwork, and we weren't sure if there would be a replacement, a missionary or a couple or a family that would be able to take our spot in Malpaisillo. And it was hard for us as well to say exactly when we would be leaving or if we would be leaving due to the residency. But I believe in the end that God worked everything out. We received our confirmation for the residency, and I think it was in around May of last year. And so that was kind of the confirmation that, okay, now we have to get moving, because also the paperwork wouldn't expire by the end of the year, so we had a time frame in which we had to make the move. But right at the same time that our paperwork plans were becoming confirmed, also the mission had been notified us that Nelson and Megan Garcete, that is a young couple from Pennsylvania, had an interest in going to Nicaragua. And it seemed the timing just worked out as if God had planned it, being they arrived in August and we left in September. So during those months, it was there was lots of changes in selling the animals, and it was hard to, changes in life aren't always easy, but at the same time thinking about my work, and there we weren't sure exactly, being the mission property was too small to continue expanding the goats or the pigs, because soon they were going to start entering in the church and such like. So in the end, we felt that this has been God's will for us, and I guess I'm not sure now which was harder, leaving Canada to go to Nicaragua or leaving Nicaragua to come back to Canada. But at the same time, we're glad to be here. So that's a brief overview of the timeline and what has happened in my life particularly. And I thought that I'd also take the opportunity to introduce my wife, Wendy Quintero, now Wendy Bauman. Some of you may know a bit of her history, but I thought I might take the opportunity. Wendy was born and raised in León, Nicaragua, León is the city where the mission, there is a church in León. Wendy's mother was a single mother of 4 children. At first at times she made her living at home, looking for ways to earn money to provide for her children. And later on she got a job and would have worked away from home and had a babysitter to look after the children. Wendy's biological father was not present during her growing up years, or at all for that matter. He is a farmer. He lives about 10 kilometers, perhaps 10 kilometers outside of the city, and although he has not been involved in raising Wendy and her siblings, he hasn't either, he still recognizes his children, and so during Wendy's growing up years, her and her siblings would have, during school vacations or weekends, they would have gone to the farm to visit their father. And Raul Quintero is a well-known man in the area. Later on, when Wendy was a young girl, a stepfather came on the scene, and later on, him and Wendy's mom were married, and he has always been accepted by the children, the 4 children, and respected, but not necessarily involved in raising the children. That was always responsibility of the mother. And so Wendy's mom and her stepfather did not have any children. All 4 children have the same parents. So that's a bit of the family setting where Wendy would have grown up. In 2018, Wendy's mom and her 2 older brothers and their wives moved to Guatemala seeking work opportunities, and thus leaving Wendy and her younger sister in the house in León. Wendy's mom owns a house still in León. And so the family is somewhat split now. Currently, Wendy's oldest brother and his wife and family, and the mother and stepfather continue to live in Chimaltenango and Antigua, Guatemala. And so, Wendy's mother is not a Christian, but the oldest brother and his family are Christians, and they're members at the nationwide church in Chimaltenango. So some of you might know a bit about the churches in Guatemala, and that is our connection with Guatemala. We actually traveled there before coming here, and we spent some time with Wendy's mother and her oldest brother. The second brother and his family and the younger sister are back in Leon, living in the mother's house, and they are not Christians. They don't come to church, but we still definitely keep in touch with them. Wendy was introduced to the Mennonite church in Leon through her brother Roger, probably as a young teenager, or maybe when she was 15, started to attend church and some of the activities in Leon, and later on she became friends with Dalmar and Sarah Martin, who were in that time living in Leon as well. And so Wendy made her decision to follow Christ in 2016, and she was baptized and accepted as a member in the church in Leon exactly 6 years ago. I don't know if John would have remembered, but today, February the 19th, Wendy was baptized, and I think John was officiating. So that was in February 2016, and I would have moved to Nicaragua in 2017 she was baptized. I would have moved to Nicaragua 1 month after she was baptized. So anyways, that's a introduction for my wife, and I guess if you have questions or want to know more, you'll have to talk to us some other time, and we can continue to share about our lives. Just I wanted to talk about a bit about our ministry in Nicaragua, myself and also Wendy after we were married. What was our ministry? I guess I feel that we didn't really have a particular ministry. I felt that we rather lived a normal life, just living and working in the community, and also being part of the church activities. But I didn't think I would talk too much about the church activities and such, although that is definitely a very important part of of our ministry. I just wanted to highlight two points, two things that I felt were needed and that I needed to learn and practice in my life living in Nicaragua. And they're two teachings that we find in Scripture, and that they help us. They help me, and they can help all of us. Like Justin shared, we don't have to be in a foreign land to reach out to those around us. The first point we find in Galatians 6, 9, and 10. I'm just going to read the verses. Galatians 6, 9, and 10. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. the point is, do good unto all men, and especially unto them who have the household of faith. So this is a clear instruction for us. And I was thinking of sharing some practical situations or some of the things that I would have faced. Hopefully I don't go too long here. I should leave time for Myron as well. In Nicaragua, it wasn't too hard to find opportunities to reach out and do good to those around us. Or to say it in a different way, it wasn't too hard for those opportunities to come our way. That was definitely my experience, and I know when I talk about my experience, I'm also talking, I believe, about the experience of the other missionaries, the ones that are still working. And so I guess what I'm talking about is doing favors for other people, or lending a hand, helping out. Just to give you a bit of an idea of the variety of things that we would have encountered. It could be that the neighbor wants you to sharpen some of his kitchen knives, or maybe his machete that's dull. He wants his machete sharpened to chop down the grass. Maybe someone else wants me to come and look at their pigs to see what's wrong with them, what problem they might have. Another common one would be doing trips with a vehicle. The mission vehicles, often people would ask us to do trips for them. Could we go? Maybe one of their family members had died and they live in a different community. Could we take them to the visitation in the evening? Or perhaps there's a sick person that needs to be taken to the hospital. Can we please do the trip for them? Perhaps someone wants to borrow your phone to make a phone call because they don't have any minutes to call whatever their problem is. And also lending tools. The mission had tools that people would want to borrow the tools in order to do their work. And I have to confess that I really don't have a good record for lending out tools. If you want to start a rental business, don't hire me because you're going to end up with no tools at all. Over time, we learned that we have to be a bit more careful who we lend tools to. But even that way, a story, there was a neighbor man that wanted to borrow the grinder. And so I said, well, I'm pretty sure that it should be fine. He's a close neighbor. I have confidence that he's not going to try to steal it or anything. And he just wants it for the afternoon. He'll bring it back in the evening. Well, what happened, I think I was gone in the evening, and so he wasn't able to get it back to me. The next day I went past his place, and he said he was kind of, he didn't know what to say, and I said, do you have the grinder? And he's like, the funny thing is I can't find it. And the poor guy, I believe him that he didn't know what happened to it. Either a family member came into his bedroom at night and took it to sell it, make some money, or he thought that it must have been his worker, that when he told the worker to put the tool away, he didn't actually put it away, he put it in his backpack instead. So that's just a situation that, even if we're sure that we might have confidence in the person that they're going to be responsible, but things happen. Another common thing that we encountered a lot was lending money. People always seem to be in need of a bit more money, or they don't have enough money for what they want to do. It may be $1 that they need for the bus fare, or it may be to make their house payment, or to pay the bank for a loan that they aren't able to pay. And so we are always faced with these situations. And, well, we really need wisdom from God and discerning how we can help and how shouldn't we. When talking about lending money, one of the missionaries said, well, first of all, there was one man from the community that said, don't ever give money to people because they don't pay you. In Malpaisillo, people don't pay. Well, that's his opinion, but on the other hand, the Bible says, do good unto all men. And so, but one of the missionaries said, when you lend money, you have to lend it with the mentality that you're not going to see that money again. And so that's the way it is. If you're going to lend money, just be okay with it being a donation. And sometimes we feel a bit overwhelmed with all these in well-doing. I guess one of the things that helped me in talking about lending money, sometimes I felt that I really didn't have much on hand and people were asking for it and I didn't know if I should give or not. One of the things that helped me, Jason Althouse told me as well, that you can keep a fund on hand that you can say that, well, that's not mine, that money is for lending. And actually, sometimes people would give me money. It could be some of you that would have sent money or visitors that left a donation. And sometimes, really all of our money should be, it's God's money. But when I would receive a donation, sometimes if I didn't have a need, I would put that aside. And then when someone would come, I could feel a bit more free in giving because being I hadn't worked for it, and I can just classify it as money to be lent out. And we have to, we need God wisdom to know how to deal with these situations. Sometimes we don't have time. The other question is it really a need? Or is it a worthwhile cause? Or is it isn't not worthwhile? I have another example of a pipe. A young person, this was in the year 2018 when there was protests in Nicaragua. And the protesters, they didn't have guns as such, but they made these homemade guns, which was a piece of pipe with a cap on one end, and they put some explosive in with some nails or whatever they could find, and that was what they used for rioting and for defending themselves. One fellow came along and he said, he was just biking by on his bicycle, Felipe, and I says, yeah, what can I do for you? He says, I have this piece of pipe, I was just wondering if you'd just be able to weld a cap on the one end. I just need this. Just on the one end, I need the cap welder. I said, estás loco. You're crazy. I'm not going to... how do you think that I, as a Christian, am going to help you to make a firearm to protest against the government? So that's an example of a cause that was not worthwhile. And then I remember the neighbors came with a pipe and they wanted me to weld a cross to mark the grave of their grandfather who had died. And so that was something that I could do. That was a worthwhile use of the pipe. So some things we also have to use our discernment to know what is worthwhile and what is not. And then I just wanted to mention too that how these verses say about, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. I think that when we help others, we must prioritize our brothers and sisters in the faith. We should be sensitive to their needs. Maybe inviting them to your house for a meal, or whatever. I think that we should be more quick to help our brothers and sisters, but that we should also try to help the non-believers and be a testimony. Well, there's more things I could share, but I think I'll just move on to the second point. in Titus 2. Titus 2, 6 and 7 says, Young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded, in all things showing thyself a pattern of good works, in doctrine showing uncorruptness, gravity, sincerity. And then verse 12 says, teaching us that denying ungodly and worldly lust, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. These verses, what I wanted to pull out is that we should leave a good example. As missionaries, and for all of us, we should leave a good example to the people around us. I believe that young converts, the young people, there's often youth in the churches that when they make the decision to follow Christ, their decision is based upon the example of the missionaries. Their decision goes something like, do I want to pattern my life after this person? Or is it? And that's their decision. And so our example is very important. I also think of a missionary who would have been in Nicaragua during my time, and the way he had such a positive impact on the mission, blessing to the church. And this particular missionary, I think, it was hardest for him to learn Spanish. He was very hard for him to learn. But it just makes me marvel over and over how, even though he was very limited in being able to express himself and to teach, but yet he made such a positive impact in his example and just being willing to participate in the church activities. And so just the point that I think that our example is even more important than our words. And, well, just some other points, areas in which we can be examples. John talked first of all, thinking of our family life. What should a family look like? A marriage. These are ways in which we can be an example. What about the youth? I think in this verse it talks about the young men being examples, showing themselves a pattern of good works. And I wonder if it's because that in the world, the young people are so easily influenced by the devil and get into evil things, that the youth can be such a drastic difference in their example. And also in work. And now John was talking about the economic situation in Nicaragua, and I just agreed with what he shared. And I think that in the churches there's a need of examples of how to work. How can we as Christians make a living? How can we work with our hands, as it says in 1 Thessalonians 4? And I think that in Nicaragua, we can encourage more self-employment, ways in which people can work and earn their living, and perhaps not depend on employers. Many times the businesses and employers don't treat very fairly to their employees, and also the pay isn't very much. But I think that perhaps with some investment, training, ideas, there definitely are opportunities for work. And I think that's kind of one of our burdens for the churches in Nicaragua. And what about the young men? How will they learn to work if they don't have, especially if they don't have fathers who can teach them ways that they can earn a living and being honest and responsible in areas of work is also a big and very important. I just think of times when in business sometimes I would feel that I didn't have time to do all the things that people would wonder if I could build this or make that, or sometimes I would refer them, well, why don't you go and talk to the carpenter Juan, maybe he can make your, sorry, not John Fenner, but another carpenter in town, maybe he can help you out. And they say, well, I don't want to work with him, he doesn't treat me well, or he'll charge me way too much, or whatever. They don't trust each other, and just the example that we can leave in being responsible and honest. So anyways, that's some of my experiences, and I think I should let Myron share his part as well. So thank you for your attention and your interest.
All right, thank you, Phil. And another thing to add on that is showing them how family life is. They don't have a whole lot of structured family. Normally, children are raised by moms, grandmas, great-grandmas as well. But yes, this would be our family. Most of you know, but our oldest is Felix. He was born 3 months after we got there. And then Addison is our youngest. So what did we do? Or what were we involved with? I would have, at the end I was preaching every other Sunday, which was a taxing role at times. And I would have started out as assistant pastor, and then the lead pastor would have left, and I would have filled in his role. We were involved with children's Bible classes on Tuesday nights, and that would have been the same in Malpacio. They would have had theirs on Tuesday nights as well. Church and staff care, that would have been visiting people from the church in their home or having them over, or just checking in with the staff, seeing how they're doing. Are they feeling encouraged? Are they getting along? That was more with the single staff, in Leon that is, versus the married staff, but we definitely try to relate with the married staff as well. We were also youth leaders, and that would involve activities on Friday nights usually, sometimes Saturdays, and that would be roughly twice a month. And then we were also involved with Bible studies. There would have been one Bible study that got started on Monday nights, which I was voluntary. You could attend or you couldn't attend, and that one was a blessing because that one was run by people from in the church, and they kept it going, and I could just attend when I felt like it, and so that was a blessing. Instruction classes were more one-on-one. They weren't in group settings. They were just, they would come and say that I would like to become part of the church, or else we would just study with somebody if they were attending church for a while, just to give them an understanding of what we believe. Highlights or things we will miss from Nicaragua definitely is relationships. That would be one of the key ones that we would miss. The mission staff, relating with them and just working alongside of them. Visits with church people, interactions with neighbors, interactions with youth, seeing people grow in their faith, and that was really exciting. Being a pastor and seeing people grow, it makes it exciting, and it makes it feel like things are happening even though you're not in charge of their spiritual growth. God's the one that's in charge. It's exciting to see him work in other people. The Nicaraguan slower pace of life or warm culture, that will be missed. I realize that this pace of life is a bit faster, and that's okay. Not sure that I'll catch up to it right away, but I'll try. People are often sitting out on the porch and willing to talk. It's warm all year round, and so you don't have a time of year that people are inside because it's cold out. So oftentimes on walks you'd end up chatting with somebody, or you actually wouldn't get to your actual destination when you thought you would because somebody else would stop you and you'd end up chatting for a while. Family time, it was a more open schedule during the day, I should say. Evenings tended to book up a little bit more, but we did enjoy a lot more family time there, which was a blessing. And being stretched in our faith and worldview, it didn't seem like it was a blessing or something that we would have enjoyed in the moment necessarily, but looking back, it is a huge blessing. And I hope I can continue growing in areas in my Christian walk as well. Having our children grow and learn in a different culture, it's going to be exciting going back for a visit. Not sure that I want to go back right away, but when we go back for a visit and just seeing friends, seeing interaction between the youth or the people that we got to know and our children, there was definitely a connection there that we couldn't have necessarily, or that they created without our help, just because they were children and they could reach out to people that we couldn't. Eating Nicaraguan food. Nicaraguan food is not spicy. It's actually a little bit bland, if I can say that. It's not like Mexico where your food is very spicy. We enjoyed hosting people. There wasn't very many visitors that came, but we did enjoy the ones that came. And if we did have an opportunity to host, we enjoyed that. Just connecting with people that we didn't know, or friends of other people that were around. We'd enjoy just connecting with them. Seeing places within Nicaragua, just touring the countryside, it's a beautiful country, and in dry season it can be dusty, but it still is beautiful in rainy season, and dry season does have its beautiful parts as well. What things were hard? The language was definitely a hard one for me, and I wish I could say that I'm fluent in Spanish now, but I would have to say otherwise. I can get by. I can understand most of a conversation, but I still can get lost every now and then, and to speak it comes hard for me. Message preparation did come a bit harder for me. Getting my thoughts onto paper didn't come naturally. It came, but it wasn't a natural thing. The open schedule was nice, and it was also hard. You would fill your time with, your 1 week might be packed full, and then the next week might be, well, what am I going to do today? I didn't have a job like Phil did, or I didn't have animals, I should say, like Phil did. And so what would I do? Well, to start something, I needed to get paperwork to start something, and well, that would take a little while. And did I want to start something that somebody else had, and yeah, just the different aspects of that. Decisions as an only pastor at church. When the lead pastor left, we were left in charge, and we were the only pastors there. And that was until we left. We were definitely thankful for Jason and Krista there. They weren't in Leon, but Malpasio isn't that far away, that we were definitely glad to bounce things off of them and bounce ideas off of them as well. We were essentially the ones leading the church, but just different ideas or different questions that would come up. It was definitely good to have a second opinion. Walking through difficult situations with people, yeah, that is fairly self-explanatory. COVID was hard. Travel was complicated into Nicaragua. You needed to get your COVID test submitted into the airline, and you needed to have it submitted within 36 hours, and you needed to have it within 72. So that only gave you a short window to have your COVID test, get the results. You needed to pretty much have it guaranteed that it would come back within 24 hours, because if it didn't, then you wouldn't be able to get it into the airline on time, and so it wouldn't be accepted. Losing loved ones. Regina's grandma passed away when we were in Nicaragua and weren't able to go to the funeral, as well as John and Laura and the rest of the family weren't able to go to the funeral as well, being as it was COVID time. And yeah, also an uncle passed away as well that we didn't end up attending. The hot weather, it did drain your energy level, and yeah, it was something to get used to. Communication and teamwork. If you've been on a mission at all, it's key to communicate, and to communicate well. And sometimes there can be things that come up that are hard to work through. I like to think that we did get along, and we did. There were some times that we just needed to communicate a bit more. Culture difference and in values and time. Yeah, it is a different culture, and so they will do things differently, and you can accept it, or it can kind of work at you the wrong way sometimes. Things we have learned or are learning. Missions is a lifestyle, not just a place where you are at. So now moving back here, we are still on missions. Our title might not be missionaries, but essentially we are missionaries here. And yeah, that is definitely something that we are learning, and hope to continue learning throughout our life, and hope to be called by God where He wants us, and that we'd be willing to answer. Pastoral work, it's not something that I have mastered. It's something that I learned a little bit about. I still don't know the ins and outs of it, and I definitely have learned to appreciate what pastors do around here, and all the work and energy that goes into message prep, and then the work behind the scenes of working with people and just keeping things going and following Christ. Parenthood, it was a blessing. As I said, we have had 2 children, and it was good to learn to parent, and in that way it was nice to have a bit more of an open schedule, to have time for children. Time management, it's something that we need to learn now as well. We're learning it down there. and now we're learning it in this culture as well, and just how to manage our time with children, their time, and work, and everything that comes into life. How to navigate through wealth and poverty. It's kind of hard to look at culture here and just the wealth that is around us, and then see the poverty in Nicaragua as well, and just how to know what's the path that we should take here, or what decisions should we make there, and any advice on things like that I definitely would invite, because it's not an easy thing to navigate through. Our identity is not in what we do, but who we are in Christ. Sometimes we may have felt like we weren't doing a whole lot, but just reaching out to that neighbor across the street, or talking to that person, or having time for this person, or it's not what we do, but who we are in Christ. The church is God's church. That's what I like to look at when I was leading the church. It's not my church, it's not our church, it's God's church. Whether it grows in numbers or grows in understanding, that's God's realm. That's not my realm. I can do my part, but I can't make the increase happen. How can you support missionaries? By prayer. That's a huge one. Prayer for unity in between workers, and as well in the church or whatever mission you're a part of. For the mission organization they work with, often there's a board somewhere that makes decisions sometimes, and just that they would have wisdom in those decisions. For the country that they are in, whether it's a open or closed country to Christianity, that can make a difference in how they are able to minister as well, but just for the country as a whole. And visit. It was definitely special to have a few of you down there in Nicaragua, and it is an encouragement. Communicating with them. I know it's not a necessary thing that everyone would communicate, because that could look overwhelming, but if a few of you think of it and do it, it's definitely a blessing to have communication. Remembering their children, it was definitely a blessing to have people remember our children, and I can imagine that it would be for others that are married and have children. It's like you're giving a gift to us. If you give a gift to our children, or if you send a card to them, it's like you're sending a card to us, is what we felt if our children were remembered as well. And financially, it was a blessing to have financial support as well, and not have the stress of needing to wonder where our financial support is going to come from. So thank you for all you did. I do have a number of pictures to show here, if there are questions, I can try and clarify them at the end. So we started out our time in Guatemala, and this would be the Spanish school. My teacher would have been on the right over here, and this is Regina's Spanish teacher, and this here would have been Jose and Esperanza, and that was the family that we stayed with. Spanish classes were in the morning, and then we were spent the rest of the day either in Antigua or, yeah, with them. This was heading to Nicaragua then. We were in Antigua for Spanish school for 4 weeks, and then we headed to Nicaragua. So where we were would have been Leon. Right here would have been what is Malpasio. There's a volcano line that comes up through here where numerous volcanoes are, and this here is more uninhabited. There is a road that goes here, but I never traveled it, and I don't know how many hours it would be bumping along the road to get over to the east coast over here. Then a closer view of where we were in Leon. This here would have been the road to Malpasio if you were there before. This is the church there, the Palabra de Vida church where we attended. That is our house. You can't really see the roads there, but it would have been on a road beside a park. And here is where Nate and Angie Miller live. They would be the business administrator of Leon and Malpasio. This is where Justin lived. These are all on separate streets here. But yeah, that's where Justin's house would have been. And then that is where Brennan and Janessa Martin lived. And they have since moved. These houses are all rented, and the church is owned by Olive Branch, as well as a house out in Monterredondo, which I think they're currently trying to sell. So some of you have asked how far it is between Leon and Malpasio. It is 37 minutes according to Google Maps. And Phil had said that Wendy grew up in Leon. San Jeronimo, which is pretty much part of Leon, is where she would have grown up. Is that correct? So this here would have been our house that we lived in for the 3 years that we were there. One story and an answer to prayer that we didn't pray, but maybe someone was praying here. I was sitting here, and Felix often would run back and forth on this porch, and there was people playing soccer out on the street, and he loves balls, and so I didn't let him go out the gate because I didn't want him out onto the street, and so he decided to climb in and behind this tree, and I couldn't see him from over here. But he had got his whole body out between the bars, and only his head was on the inside of the bars. And he was standing with his feet outside the fence there, or the railing. And he was standing on that bar. And if he would have slipped, he would have pretty much hung himself. And so we are definitely thankful that, he didn't slip, because that would have been a terrible story to have. This would be our entry, or our sitting room. The door is right there. And this here is the hallway. This here is the next room that I have on slide. And then this here would be another storage room over here. So this is kind of a storage room as well. It could be turned into a little store if you wanted to. But there was a store just down the street, and there is a number of stores around to sell just random things. So we sold a few hammocks to groups that would come. So this was our hallway. One was in dry season and the other was in rainy season. And that was another storage room as well that we put our wash line in. This was our kitchen, and we had a table over here as well then. our bathroom and kind of our back patio. Right here was our neighbor's wall that you could get up on top if you wanted to, and our washing machine in the corner. So our only grass per se was out on the front porch. It just was a little flower bed. This here was our church when we got there. This here was the lead pastor, Joel and Jody Heatwell. I believe Claire Heatwell was here to share revival meetings when we were gone still. And this here is Darling Cruz and Rachel Miller. They were the single personal workers there. And Gary Heatwell and Justin were there when we got there. And then Nate and Angie Miller and their family in here. This here was the church when we left. Nate and Angie Miller, and then Brennan and Janessa were there as personal workers to fill Justin's role, and then they switched into a pastoral role, and they are the lead pastors there. And then Alyssa and Heidi are the single personal workers there, and there are currently no single guy personal workers there. This here is the Malpasio Church, and Nelson and Megan are the ones that replaced Phil and Wendy there. And then that would be Jason Outhouse, and I guess Heidi got on this one as well, and then Jason and Krista. This is the Leon Church. Our sanctuary would be over here, a double garage, kind of a Sunday school room slash fellowship room, whatever you want to, miscellaneous room I guess you could call it. And then our kitchen would be back in the back, and the girls' part is the whole upstairs there. This is a Sunday morning service, Sunday school, and we were blessed to be able to attend Youth Institute or Youth Bible School 2 times. This would be a second time. This was a sewing class that was happening. And we were also blessed to be able to attend with some of the other Beachy churches, the pastor's retreat. And we always enjoyed having staff in our home. This would be Claire and Barb, who were the administrator of Olive Branch, and now it is Jim and his wife. And this was the only group that ended up coming down when we were there. That is a group from Mountain View Nursing Home in Virginia. They are volunteers, and they send their volunteers out on a trip. It was a blessing to be part of a number of baptisms. This one is Selena's baptism, and that would have been the youth from Leon and Malpasio. And this is just attending one of our members' families. It was a joy to do that. Just some friends. These 2 girls were our neighbor girls that would come over, and then that was when they were living with their great-grandparents. And then, I don't know if it was a year or 2 years in, they ended up moving to another part in Leon with their mom then, which we were glad that their mom took them. And they weren't enrolled in school at the start, but then their mom ended up putting them in school then when she took them, which we were grateful for. This is handing out antorchas or tracts Their tracts are readily received, and they have recipes in, stories for children, and a number of things. This is just a fellowship time, which would happen once a month in Leon, every other month in Malpasio. Just doing some projects. This would be the children's class. And this isn't an accurate picture, but it gives you an idea. That one was against the concrete, or against the block wall, and so it absorbed some more heat than what it actually was, but then you have that concrete radiating, or the block radiating heat after the sun goes down yet. And in dry season, your floor definitely gets dirty, and it definitely feels rewarding when you sweep the floor. This here is Regina's friend, Michelle. She didn't have a whole lot to do with her this time, but the time that they were there with their family in Malpasio, we got to connect with her a few times when we were here this past time. And it was a blessing to attend Phil and Wendy's wedding in February. Just a market there. Another street side market. All right, are there any questions or anything that you had pressing that you wanted answered? If not, we are planning on heading out to SMBI tomorrow morning, and so yeah, we will not be around for the next 6 weeks, but we definitely covet your prayers, and we are looking forward to it, and Lord willing, plan to be back in April. So thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Phil and Myron, for sharing. It was very interesting. Yeah, just remember them in prayer. Sometimes for returning missionaries, coming back is a lot harder than going. So just continue to pray for them as they make adjustments. And yeah, let's have a word of prayer, and then afterwards we'll have one verse of song. Let's pray. Dear God, I thank you for tonight and the opportunity that we had to just listen to Phil and Myron share and their experience, and would you continue to bless the mission there and continue to be with Phil and Wendy in their adjustments here, and Myron and Regina as well. And yeah, just pray for Katrina as well. She adjusts back from coming back. And yeah, just bless us this evening and protect us on the way home. I pray this in your name. Amen. We'll have one verse.